What's happening? Welcome back to Duty's Daggers, and today we're doing a little bit of a thick versus thin video. Thick blade stock versus thin blade stock. What's better? What should you be carrying around in your pocket? And we'll get all into it. I got 3 thin blade stock knives and 3 more thick blade stock knives, and we'll kind of compare them all and see what we like better. Please subscribe to the channel. Look down there, make sure you are subscribed. And while you're there, like the video, please. So, the Mekanese Mac 2 3.5 inch. Heavy duty work knife. Blade stock of 150 thousandths. This is some of the thicker blade stock that I like to carry. I also have another beefy work knife with thick blade stock, the Demco 8020, with a blade stock of even thicker at 180 thousandths. And then how about we'll get out the thick boys first. How about a Hinderer XM18, 3.5 inch. This one's got a blade stock thickness of 164 thousandths. What was the Mekanese again? 164, 150. So the Mekanese is the thinnest blade stock of the 3 here. So we're going in descending blade stock thickness. 8020, Hinderer, Mekanese. Now these are great work knives. I carry these 2 a lot. I carry this one fairly regularly. And they're great, you know. So I guess I should give you a little background on what I do with my knives. That way you can kind of get a feel for what kind of knife I need in my pocket, or like to have in my pocket. I'm a welder. I work in a shop. And that's mostly what I use my knives for. That, and then just daily, regular life stuff that most people use their knives for. So I'm breaking down cardboard. I'm cutting out... a lot of times if I need to make a metal part that's a weird shape, I will make a cardboard template of that piece before I actually make it out of metal to make sure that it fits. And I will cut cardboard with my knife usually. If it comes to like following a line, a traced out line on the cardboard, I'll break out my slip joint. If it's a Wharncliffe, or if my primary carry is a Wharncliffe, I'll use that. If I don't happen to have a Wharncliffe or something on me, I'll just break out my utility knife and use that. So a lot of cardboard, a lot of cutting rubber hoses. I use little pieces of rubber hose as like vibration insulators on when I'm replacing a fender on a truck. A couple other things like that. Just random, cutting zip ties. I cut a lot of zip ties. Just, I guess those are the main things, but just, all kinds of random stuff. But those are the main kind of things. So I don't do any bushcrafting. I don't do any wood carving. I don't baton any of my folders. So that's kind of it. That's my use case. And I like having a real heavy-duty work knife on me. Now, do I need something with this thick a blade stock? That's kind of what we're trying to answer here. So let's put these over here and let's get out the thin boys. For the thin work knives, my 3 main go-tos are the Quiet Carry Drift Large. Oh man, I forgot to clean the blade. This is my newest purchase, and I've been really carrying it quite a lot. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Vanex blade steel, very thin blade stock. We got 86 thousandths. Really thin. I think one of these is 180 thousandths, so it's 100 thousandths less than the 8020, I think it was. Look at that difference. I think you could fit 2 of these blades in this blade, width-wise. Also carry my TRM Neutron 2 quite a lot. Very thin blade stock, not quite as thick as the Quiet Carry. We've got 90 thousandths. Still really thin. Here it is with the Mekanese. Fantastic Fantastic EDC knife. And then another TRM, my Shadow. This is used quite a bit. It's got the same blade stock thickness, 190 thousandths. Just really, really slicey, very useful blade shape. Kind of a sheep's foot with some belly. Very, very useful. And then sometimes I'll substitute in the small drift. If it's like raining or I'm near a body of water and I'm carrying one of these, I'll switch it out with this one. But this one, both the drifts are completely rust proof. So yeah, these are my main, super slicers. Now an honorable mention probably could be this, the Spyderco Delica. This is, look at that blade stock. Oh yeah, nice and thin. This is a slicing machine. 196 thousandths, so right in the vicinity of these. This is a Wharncliffe. I'm not sure if the regular drop point has this thin a blade stock. I think it does. It's got to be the same. But yeah, this is a really good slicer too. So, thick versus thin. Which do I like better? I think if we're talking purely about performance, and what I do with my knives, I gotta go thinner. Breaking down the cardboard, even getting through the rubber tubing, thinner is better. However, I love these knives very, very much, and the way that these three knives are ground, even though the blade stock is thick, the grinds are such that they can still slice pretty well. Surprisingly well for how thick the blade stock is. On the 80/20 here, we have a full flat grind, and it's an aggressive flat grind. It comes down to 15 thousandths behind the edge. That's real nice. And that brings me into talking about thickness behind the edge. The interesting thing is, you will find that these three knives with a thicker blade stock are going to have thinner measurements behind the edge than these three. Kind of opposite of what you might think. Thinner blade stock, but thicker behind the edge. Thicker blade stock, but thinner behind the edge. And I drew out a little diagram to help visualize this. We'll get into that in a second. Thinness behind the edge on the Mac 2. 16 thousandths. Back here. It gets thick up at the tip, but right in here, 16 thousandths. XM18, now this has been reground. It used to be real thick behind the edge. But now it is 12 thousandths behind the edge. That's thin, man. That is real thin. Now let's look at the measurement behind the edge on the thinner blade stock knives. We've got 16 thousandths. That's about the same, really. On the TRM, we've got 13 thousandths. And then this one gets pretty thick. This is at 21 thousandths behind the edge. So we'll use this one as the comparison. These are actually a little thinner behind the edge than I thought they were. But this is a good example of something with thin blade stock, but a little thicker behind the edge. And it's still going to slice better than these, even though these are thinner behind the edge. And here's my diagram. So on the left here, we have something with thick blade stock and a thin measurement behind the edge. Behind the edge, we're talking about this measurement right here. Let's see. Here's a thin blade stock with a thicker measurement behind the edge. Which do you think is going to pass through material easier? It's this one, because it's just less material that you're forcing through the cardboard or rubber tubing, whatever you're cutting. So even this is thicker right behind the edge, the overall thickness is much less. This is almost like if you were to try to cut cardboard with an axe. You could have the tiniest measurement behind the edge on the axe, but it's still an axe. You know what I mean? So that's kind of hopefully will help to visualize it. So these slice surprisingly well, and the thin measurement behind the edge helps for sure. But these thinner blade stock knives are just always going to slice better. So which do I like better? It's hard to say, and I started to say it earlier, but I'll continue now. As far as performance goes, as far as like ease of use, so, say you had to break down cardboard all day, 100% go with these. They're just they pass through material easier, and that's what knives do. They pass through material. It requires less force to get them to pass through. These can pass through as well, but you're pushing harder. Performance wise, this is 100%. Thinner blade stock, yes, way better. Thicker blade stock means heavier duty, right? Less possibility of something breaking, the blade breaking, the tip breaking. Now, with what I do with my knives, that's not a worry, really. I'm not worried about snapping this blade. It's just not going to happen. As long as I'm doing what it should be doing, I'm not doing some weird shit with the knife that it shouldn't be doing, then it's not going to break. Unless I drop it or something dumb. It's just not. These knives I can put more abuse into, for sure. And they're definitely not going to break. Look how thick this tip is compared to the Drift Large. Huge difference. McNeese Mac 2 in the Drift. This probably is the thickest tip on the table. That thing is just beefy as hell. And here's the 80/20. It actually has a relatively fine tip, but not as thin as the Drift. So overall, I like my big beefy work knives. There's something about them that's fun and kind of, I don't know, manly and just brutal and unbreakable, which is cool. I really like that. If I was in a survival type situation with a folding knife, I would want it to be this knife, the 80/20. It's not gonna, the blade stock is thick enough, you don't have to worry about anything breaking. You can even baton with this and you'd be fine. The lock is super, super strong. There's no Omega spring in there, nothing that can break. It's just super heavy duty, Same with these other ones. This is a very heavy duty knife, but it's very compact. This is one of the most compact knives I've ever experienced. This is a 3.5-inch blade. Same as the Hinderer. Same amount of blade. And look at this. Look at how much more compact the McNeese is compared to the Hinderer. So much more compact. It's very cool to have that amount of blade in such a tiny little, not tiny, but small package. The Hinderer, this is a really tough knife too. We have external stop pins. Super beefy frame lock. Lock bar stabilizer down here. This is a very heavy duty knife. You could baton with this. You could do all kinds of stuff. But the strongest of all three is this one, just mostly because of the lock. The Shark lock is stronger than any of these frame locks or liner locks or crossbar locks. So the answer to the question really is I like both. And it really depends on what I'm doing or think I'm going to be doing that day. If I know I'm going to be cutting a lot of stuff, I'll grab one of these. If I know I'm doing something a little more heavy duty, I'll grab one of these. If I don't know, I just grab whatever I feel like for the day. If I had to get rid of 3 of these knives and keep 3 of these knives, I would keep these ones. It's hard to say. I don't want to give these up. I love them. But I would keep these. So that's me. You might be doing different things with your knives than I am. And you might need these thicker blade stocked options. For me, thin all the way, baby. That's it. Like the video before you leave. I'd appreciate it. I'll see you soon.